Hey, everybody, welcome back to episode 3 of the Beige Brothers
Woo!
Sports Podcast. We're here to
Hey,
talk about all things basketball, and we are starting with the NBA draft class. I am your host, TJ Banks, and alongside me is Dylan Bruton, our other co host.
what's good, everybody? How y'all doing? We're about to talk about one of my favorite times of the year, draft season.
Draft season coming up, man. We know the playoffs are well underway. We're in our first round right now. Got a couple games under our belt. Oh, it looks like we got a Celtics fan here.
And green up in
Man,
here, you know what I'm saying?
the Celtics are looking pretty strong. They're going up against the Hawks right now. You see the Hawks gear. True to Atlanta,
Hey, there's no animosity towards the Atlanta Hawks. It's all love, but it's time to send y'all home. That's all I gotta
Oh
say.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not. I'm not that bad at all. I think it's gonna be over pretty quickly. 4, 5 at best.
At best.
I think they're going home pretty quickly. But yeah, man, we've been facing a lot of injuries with the first couple games. You see Giannis go down for the Bucks. We hope he's all right with a back contusion. And in that same game, Tyler Hero broke his hand, his shooting hand, then proceeded to hit a three.
Yeah, and
Wishing him a speedy recovery too.
Embiid almost went down. Ja's out.
Ja
It's
went
just a lot of
down.
guys. It's a lot of guys that are catching the injury bug. So let's hope that that doesn't last too long and everybody can stay healthy because that makes the best playoff basketball is when the stars are there. I mean,
Yeah,
we are.
yeah. I mean, it's a star-driven sport. We want to see great competition from the best and healthy teams. And
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, that's what we can hope and wish for. So
Absolutely.
we're hoping they all get recovered very quickly and can make it back in time to make some noise.
Absolutely. That's the plan.
But switching gears slightly, we're going to the teams that don't have a chance in the playoffs.
Oh no.
Didn't even make it,
And
didn't even sniff
boom.
it. They are fighting for that number 1 draft pick. And since we're
Yep.
talking draft classes, it's only right that we start with the upcoming draft class of 2023. And here we got a couple big names. Seems like everybody's fighting over this guy, Victor Wembanyama.
They say he's the unicorn. He's built out the lab. He's something we've never seen, even though personally I feel like there's different players that you can point to and pick where he draws some influence from. Obviously, the number one name that I see float around with him the most is Kristaps Porzingis. I've seen Kevin Durant. I've seen Rudy Gobert. Um, it's been a variety of names of people that he's been compared to. The question remains is with his weight. So a lot of people are very much. There's a lot of people who are a little bit hesitant because his playing ability is not questioned like that. He's got a lot of skill that you just can't teach. He does things that someone at his size shouldn't be doing, but it's just that weight with the size. Does he make that Giannis leap in the weight room, or what's his story? Because we just saw what happened with Chet Holmgren last year. His body was just not. It wasn't ready to handle that NBA physicality, and that happened in a little pickup game over the summer. So that's something that I think teams are going to keep in mind. But I don't think that stops him from going number one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I hear you. So I was a little late, or I guess on the time with Victor Wembanyama. So when I saw him, he was like about 7'1", and everyone was claiming, "Oh my gosh, he's the next LeBron James, he's the next Kevin Durant, he's the next great thing. We're gonna tank to get him." And in that time frame, that was probably about like a year and a half ago. Like I saw him, I was like, okay, cool. It's kind of thin. Similar questionable. It was a similar question about his weight and being able to play physical basketball with the NBA, and very much questioning similar to, like you mentioned, Chet Holmgren, of like, will he be more like Kevin Durant, who has been more or less durable throughout his career and has made a great strides when it comes to scoring, one of the most prolific scorers we've ever seen, or would he be someone who was just injury prone, who we would never really get to see reach that peak? And on the opposite end of that spectrum, we have like Zion Williamson. Like you see him in short stints, and it's like when he's playing, he's great. But
He's
is he
one of the best
playing?
players in the league. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's. I think that's the thing that as the NBA, as the older stars are kind of transitioning on the out. everybody's looking for that. Everyone's looking for that next big thing, and I think Victor has the star power potential, but it remains to be seen of like, can your body hold up? Because I mean, even someone in reverse, Zion is, he's built like a subatomic tank. He's built for war,
Yeah.
and he can't stay healthy. So it's like there's got to be that fine balance between, what I'm saying, in shape but also durable and able to withstand all that contact for 82 plus games.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I mentioned like when I had first heard about Victor, he was probably about like 7 feet 7'1". And in that time frame, he's grown to, I believe they say he's 7'5" now, either
Yeah,
7'4" or 7'5". And
that's
some of the stuff that I
ridiculous.
watch him do, it's like, man, at 7'5", you should not be able to do this.
No, no, no. He's
Yeah.
like a creative player out of 2K with that. It's like, how in the world did you do that? But my thing is, I think that the hype for him is solidified and whatnot, and I understand it. But I also understand why there's some teams that are like, you know what, y'all can duke it out for Victor. I want Scoop. I want to see what he can do
I
because there's a
understand
lot
that.
more. There's a lot more of a guaranteed return with him that I know. Okay, I can bet my franchise's hope that this pick is going to work out.
Yeah. So I've been a big Scoot fan for about like 3 or 4 years now. Saw him in high school when everybody was really high on Mikey Williams and JD Davidson, and they all came to Atlanta, and they were setting up the matchups for Mikey Williams, who was a top prospect at the time for his class, to play either the best player out of Alabama, who was JD Davidson at the time,
Yeah,
or to play against Scoot Henderson. And like watching that tournament, it made me a believer. I'm like, all right, this kid Scoot, he's different because his team Kale played JD Davidson's team and they beat him by 60. And then they came and they played Mikey's team in the tournament championship and won by like 40. And he was dominating, everywhere, offense, defense. He was the man. He couldn't be stopped. I was like, he's going somewhere. Now we know he like reclassified to be like a senior sooner to get out of high school and then went to the G League route instead of going college. And even in the G League route, he has shown tremendous promise being first, like I guess the backup point in his first season to I guess Jalen Green and other guys like Hardy and Moses Moody and people that came out of the G League to now being the guy for the G League Ignite and bringing a lot of promise and even taking that challenge of head-to-head rivalry with Victor Wembanyama and like the international games and showing up and showing out, hitting clutch points that like take your stock that much higher. Now, I do think that Victor is probably going to go number one. You can't teach 7'5" that can put back his own three-pointer.
yeah.
There's some stuff that you can't teach, but I'm a big fan of Scoot Henderson. I think he's going to revitalize the athletic point guards that we've seen in the mid 2010s, like
Yes.
Rose and Russell Westbrook, and bring that level of energy back. He's gonna do what people wanted Jalen Green to do.
Well, I'm gonna say this. Jalen Green is a two guard.
Fair.
It's, you said what?
I said that's fair. But so
You
was
know,
Russell Westbrook. He was a two guard at UCLA.
he was. I think it's just because his size he's kind of like a tweener. It's a little different. With Scoop though, he's got that physicality to his game. He reminds me a lot of like a more physical John Wall. Because that's another, of that big
Another
athlete
athletic point guard.
that was taking the game by storm for a while when he came into the league. And I think that with Scoop, it's like, do you want to go for do you want to swing for the home run, the grand slam? Oh no, yeah. I would say, here, let me phrase it this way. Do you want to swing for the grand slam, but there being a higher potential and risk, or do you want to go for the home run and there's a higher reward and there's a higher guarantee? It's kind of like pick your battle, pick your poison. I think with Scoop that one thing that I really think separates him is that he's got that seasoning, as you mentioned. He's played against the best of the best in his class. He's playing against grown men. And one thing I really like is he's got that dog. He's got that dog in him. You know what
He
I'm saying? Like
does.
he doesn't back down from anybody. I love players like that because I think that's an essential component to being a great player. Is having that kind of mentality, having that kind of purpose that you're driven by. And it's something that's very much needed because the game is very laissez-faire right now. Guys are a little too relaxed, a little too even kill after a loss. When they lose, he looks like he wants to, what I'm saying, break the stadium itself. Like he's like, no, like this is not going to happen again on my watch. And in that head-to-head versus Victor, it was respect there, but he was like, let's make it clear. I'm the best player here. I don't care what the scouts or the media says. And I love that. I love that kind of mentality out of young players because I think that confidence can really keep you going in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's speaking absolute truths right there. I think they're pretty much a lock to go 1-2, no matter who pretty much picks them up. Yeah. I think there are a couple other names that need to be mentioned that will make a lot of noise and make a lot of teams happy. And their names are Men and Asar Thompson. They are coming out of Overtime Elite here in Atlanta. I believe they're both about 6'7". They're twins. So twins 6'7", probably like a 7-foot wingspan, super athletic, and can do just about anything and play both sides of the ball very well. Like they each have like 40-inch verticals at 6'7". It's ridiculous the amount of athleticism that they have. And you wouldn't necessarily think it just looking at them. Like they don't have a super stocky build, but they are going to be amazing players. And I'm super hyped to see them come into the league and really take that Overtime Elite foundation and really give it a little bit of more publicity, because now it's another alternative to just either overseas, college, G League, Ignite. There's a fourth way to get there now. And they're both top. I would be surprised if either one of them drops below 6 or 7.
I was about to say they're at the very
I'd be
least.
surprised if they dropped out the top 5, because I don't think you can name 5 players in that draft that's better than them.
No.
We named the only 2 that would be consensus number ones in any other draft.
I think if it wasn't for the investigation and then that last game against San Diego State, I think Brandon Miller would have been that other name to slot in there, because he's got a skill set at his size that's perfect for the modern NBA, and he plays with a lot of confidence. He plays with that chip on his shoulder. But when you look at the polishedness, you look at the ready to contribute off bat and that all-around skill set. Yeah, the Thompson twins, they're the real deal. I was late to finding out about them because I'm not gonna lie. Soon as I graduated high school, soon as I graduated college, which coming on a year next month, once the guys became younger than me, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit like, what's going on here? You know what I'm saying? Like it's jarring at times. Like, wait, you're doing this, and I'm over here like working check to check. Okay, you know what? I need to get my life together. Like y'all young enough that I could have changed your diapers. Like, what's going on here, man? But but I think that with the Thompson twins, what I really do like with their game is that you can tell they've spent a lot of hours really working and honing in on the skill. They have the athleticism. They have those gifts and talents that you can't teach, but they're so skilled, they're so fundamentally sound. And I think that that's something that players need to remind themselves of is skill endures. Athleticism is great. And you know what I'm saying? If you're a best of both worlds, then you can be one of the greatest players. But when you have that skill that keeps you sustained when your athleticism wanes, rhyming accidentally, but you can really do a lot for yourself. You know what I'm saying? And I think that any team that drafts either of them, it's not going to be like the Harrison twin situation, not to throw stones on them, but what people thought was going to be what they are is okay, let me reword that. What people thought the Harrison twins were going to be is what the Thompson twins are. And I really believe that they have a chance of going far with it.
Yeah. So we actually see a couple of products that are in the NBA that are coming from that overtime elite background. Dominic Barlow with the Spurs is kind of the main name that made it. And he doesn't make a whole lot of noise, but when you look at these two young men, the Thompson twins, they really seized the opportunity. So when they came, a little bit of background story, when they came in the overtime elite, like they weren't the biggest names there, like by far. It was actually another set of twins that were the big names, the Bewley twins, Matt
Yeah,
and Bewley. They were
yeah, I knew
very,
about that
yeah, very
before.
heralded coming into overtime elite, and kind of gave overtime elite a little bit of legitimacy at the
Yeah,
time when no one really knew who they were. But immediately, like from the first pre games, you could see, oh, these Thompson twins are different. And they were on separate teams like in their first year, but then they got on the same team. And I was like, hey,
no,
it just almost became unfair.
it's over
Like they
now.
lost. I kept in contact with what they were doing, and they lost one game all season, and it was a close game, and
They
they
did
just like,
league with grown men, so that's
yeah,
no.
yeah, they played in the basketball tournament last year. The post one of post NCAA, where they have a lot of NCAA alum come through and a lot of professionals from overseas to compete for like $1 million. And that's when they kind of shot to that stardom level. They were like, oh, these kids are only 17 and they are balling with grown men, like that are in upper 20s, young 30s that
These are
play
grown
this
men
game
with pensions.
overseas.
These are grown men with pensions and families.
Yes, yes. These are grown men who made basketball their lives. And these kids are 16 and 17, and they are hooping. They
These
are
kids were
hooping to
born
no.
after 9/11, the second Bush election, and they're giving them buckets.
Yes, yes. And that was where they really shot to like the national stage. So I commend them for making the most of their opportunity, getting on with a new platform and really dominating and becoming the face of that platform.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see whoever gets them. They're going to have great two-way players with either one of them, and they've shown a level of poise and clutchness to even be very efficient in the late moments of a game.
And that's very important because you look at, I mean, he doesn't play like that, but you look at what De'Aaron Fox has been doing all year. The most efficient, highest scoring player, fourth quarter overtimes. And it's a wide margin,
Yeah,
significantly. And he shows it game after game when the Kings are in dire need of that fourth quarter takeover, bucket getting, you name it. And I think that with both of them, as you said, like they have that ability to step on in and contribute in that way. And any team that gets them is going to be, doing the happy dance of
yeah,
all happy.
yeah. I think it's going to be a very positive impact from day one.
For
Um,
sure.
but now that we're talking about draft classes, we got to take a look back. We got to take a
Oh,
look back at some
I
of
was
the
about to say though, hold
great
up, hold
draft
up.
classes.
I want to throw one name in there though,
Okay.
because I feel like to take it to the more traditional route of the tournament, a player that really impressed me and really raised his stock had to be Jordan Hawkins from UConn. I
Mm,
think that he's not going to be a top 10. At the best, he'll be lower lottery, but he's going first round
okay.
because his shot making ability from all parts of the court, you can't that. You know what I'm saying? He's not the most athletic, he's not the biggest guy, but he's very adept at finding his spots and finding his pockets in the court where you're not stopping him. Mid range three, you're not stopping him. Down back, post game, you're not stopping him. And I think that's something that is very underregarded and underappreciated is that all around, scoring game. But obviously, if you've grown up watching, Kobe, T Mac, D Wade, Melo, seeing those kind of scorers that had that versatile bag going, at all spots of the court, that's just something you can't teach. I think that whatever team picks him is going to be very happy, and he's going to come as a surprise to some. But watch him in the tournament, it was like, no, he's got the eye of the tiger. He's ready to go, and he can play on and off ball. So it's very seamless for him to fit into any team and whatever they have set up. But yes, now transition to the other drafts. I just had to give him some props. You know, what I'm saying he balled out. So I had to do that.
Oh no, you're all good. You're all good, man. We're gonna give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
And we appreciate you for going ahead and chiming that in. A name that you might not have known coming out of UConn unless
Well,
you
and him,
watched the national championship.
and him and him and Angel Reese, they grew up together. So you know what I'm saying? They both spent time growing up playing with each other. And he said she used to blow him out when they were kids. But I think that now that margin is a little closer
A
now.
little
But
closer. Oh, okay. Okay. So we're talking about a little love and basketball story, maybe? Maybe a Monica Wright situation? No?
hey, who
No?
knows?
Who knows? All right.
You know, stay safe, kids. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so we're going to do a slight transition to some of the other draft classes that have been heralded as some of the greatest, especially since we have unicorns that we just mentioned. We have several of them in this upcoming draft. So you look back at 84, you have Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, John Stockton, you got Sam Bowie, the infamous Sam Bowie, but you got Charles
Oh man,
Barkley. You got other like great legendary Hall of Famers that are coming out of that, along with the 1996 draft.
that to me is the best draft of all time.
And that you have a very solid argument because that
I think
draft is extremely that first round. That first round is top heavy.
ridiculous. The thing with that draft that I say puts it up over 84 and 03 for me is the depth in that draft, because you have everything from superstars to stars, contributing role players, and valuable pieces that were on championship teams, and even the undrafted guys. You know, Ben Wallace came out of that draft. Nobody knew about him, and he became one of the greatest defensive centers that we've ever seen. And obviously, that was a draft that, you know, coming into it, there was a lot of hype. There was a lot of buzz around that draft. I wasn't alive in '96, so I'm not speaking as if I was there, but everyone I know that was there was like, the hype for that draft was ridiculous because it was almost like a changing of the guard from the Jordan era to the new millennium, and seeing, okay, a year prior, we just had the first high school player since Moses Malone, which was Kevin Garnett in '95. We had the first high school player get drafted at pick number 5. Now we have the first guard to declare for the draft from high school, Kobe Bryant. And then a year later, '97, was Tracy McGrady. So you have 3 very influential and pivotal players to that, you know, changing of the guard from the Jordan era to a whole new era of basketball that came out of that draft. And can't forget Allen Iverson, you know, can't forget Ray Allen, Stephon Marbury,
Vince
Steve Nash.
Carter.
Vince Carter came in '98. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that draft started like a chain, a true chain reaction. Not to say that the '95 or '94 drafts weren't great, because they had definitely had great players. But when you see like the bulk of talent, '96 really was like, boom, here we go. Like it's just gonna keep getting better after this. So I think '03, like '03 is very top heavy in my personal opinion. It's an amazing draft. You know, we're 20-year anniversary, shout out, because that was probably the first draft that I like actively remember watching and really being invested in, you know what I'm saying, as a child. But it's very top heavy. It's very top heavy. You have like solid role players, but when you compare it to '96, you know what I'm saying, had, you know, guys like Derek Fisher, who was unknown, but the Lakers were like, hey, we need a point guard that is able to spread the floor and is able to be a distributor when needed, but we don't need you to be the primary, you know, ball general, but we just need you to be someone who steps up in big moments. And he made some of the clutchest shots ever. He knew how to play, he knew how to show up when needed. And you had guys like, you know, Antoine Walker, who, you know, Celtic guy, you know what I'm saying? He was an all-star, never saw a shot that he didn't like, but he was also able to be a contributor on that '06 Miami Heat team. He hit a lot of big shots during that playoff run. So, you know, everybody kind of found their lane. Everybody found their way to contribute. Even Marcus Camby, second pick in that draft. For all intents and purposes, some might say, oh, well, he didn't live up to the hype as being pick number 2 and considering who came after him. But I personally think that, you know, to be one of the best defensive centers, one of the best rebounding centers in the era that he played in the era of guys like Ben Wallace, that was no easy feat. That was the most that was the slowest pacing era and one of the most physical eras, and the talent level was very high. So, you know, for a long time, Marcus Camby was one of those guys. If he's in the paint, you're going to think twice about, going up against him.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention people like Ray Allen and like Peja Stojakovic, some of the greatest shooters
Yeah,
of all
yeah,
time. Like I
true.
know you mentioned Steve Nash, who won those 2 MVPs, and we can talk about that another time because that might need to be a venting segment for some.
That
But
definitely.
you mentioned like a lot of good points. They had everything from key stars to role players to like up and coming like futures here. It was a draft that had a lot of good picks. Like,
Yeah,
and
there's
you
some.
can't say that for every draft. It's one of the reasons
No,
why it's very highly debated
yeah,
amongst those three. Uh,
yeah. I mean, you look at with that track. There's another name I want to throw in there. Big Z. That was the first. That was the first All Star that LeBron played next to. He came out of that draft. One of my favorite players out of that draft that is one of the most underrated players
I
of
believe I
all
know who you're
time
about to say.
that does not get the credit, but he was in his prime. He was like that. But I got to go with my man Sharif
I
Abdul-Rahim.
knew you were going there.
That man was the truth, man. Like when you think about like that kind of like tall, versatile, small forward, power forward, basically in the mold of a Carmelo, a Jason Tatum, a Grant Hill. Like he was that, you know what I'm saying? And he was a one and done. That was also something that at the time was not seen as the proper route to go if you were a college player. It was like at least you need to spend 2 to 3 years for, you know what I'm saying, if you really have to prove yourself. But he was a one and done, and he would won Pac-10 Player of the Year as a freshman. And this was back when the Pac-10, had Arizona,
Yeah.
UCLA, USC, you know what I'm saying, Washington. Like the level of hoops was at a very high competitive stake. So he came in and he sadly had to play on one of the worst organizations, but they have some of the best jerseys ever. So it's like, I'm gonna get that number 3 throwback because that jersey is too fly. But his skill wise, like he was a player that if you put in today's NBA, oh, he's going off. He's going ridiculous. He just had a skill set that was not like most players at his size.
Yeah.
So I mean that draft had everything. You know what I'm saying? That's why like I'm a bit biased to the '96 draft, but I give it its props.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to talk a little bit about the '03 draft. We might run out of time in this segment and might have to pick back up a little bit later. But yeah, the '03 draft, you mentioned it was very top heavy, a very heralded class. You had Carmelo Anthony that was coming off of a national championship, being the player of the year in college at Syracuse.
Yeah,
You had LeBron James, who was the next coming of Michael Jordan at the time, who was the next big thing, who what people are kind of saying he was to Jordan, what they're expecting Victor to be to the NBA. And we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see about that one. I think that might be just a little bit of a stretch.
They're always trying to pass off that next title of this is the next great. Like they did. We saw them do it with Zion. And I mean, he's been great when he plays.
It remains to be seen. I think
when he plays.
I think the one who dealt with that the hardest was Andrew Wiggins because he came in with that next LeBron hype. Personally, I saw his game more as a hybrid between Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady. I don't think that we're going to see someone like LeBron with his size, but his speed and his fluidness and that skill. Like a player like LeBron just does not come around every so often. So I think his game was more so in alignment with those two. But just that expectation of like, oh, you're supposed to be that guy. And, between the ineptness of Minnesota and injuries and inconsistency, it made it a little difficult for him to kind of make that leap. But he's obviously doing great things in Golden State. He's a high contributing player. But, it's safe to say that he's probably not going to reach that echelon that people had anticipated and thought of him when he was coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's okay. But they're always trying to pass things off. I remember back in 2010, people were trying to pass off that Harrison Barnes was going to be the next great thing.
You know, what's so crazy
And
was
like
also
I vividly remember this
I remember that too.
college, and it was like, okay, John Wall just went number one. Harrison Barnes, he's
It's
going to be the
going
next LeBron James. He's 6'8". He's athletic. He's fundamentally sound. He's XYZ. I'm like, he's a good player.
yeah, yeah.
And then you see him at North Carolina, like he's solid. Like he's good. He was a pivotal piece. He was a good piece on that Warriors 2015 squad. I mean, he hit some big shots, played some good defense, and he's doing work with the Kings right now.
Oh, he's
He's
doing great.
doing work out in Sacramento. But it's just like when you get placed with so much hype at such a young age, it's almost setting you up to fail.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
like LeBron's like we just mentioned, LeBron is like a once in a lifetime, once in a generational player that just had the hype and lived up, and not only lived up, exceeded the expectations.
Yeah.
Like, because I remember vividly hearing players in 2002, 2003, if he get drafted to us, I mean, he might average 10, 15 points. He going to come off the bench. That man, with by game 2, he was averaging like 25. Like,
Yeah.
like it was y'all's franchise player, and everybody forgot about Donyell Marshall and like folks that was talking trash. Like when he got drafted, yeah, I don't think he's gonna do too much. Like this is a grown man's league. He was 18 bodying y'all.
I'm about to say, like, they should have looked at him and just seen, like, all right, man, he's built like he took the super serum soldier. Like this is not no 18-year-old. This is not no 18-year-old future, you know, accountant, future. This is not no 18-year-old future Hawkeye employee. This is a grown man who is built like a tank as well. But he's lean, so he's able to, you know, play with his speed and not lose that. And I think that's something that goes underregarded too, because I've had debates with friends of mine who have said, oh, well, you know, LeBron came into the league without a jumper. I'm like, well, when the hype came for Ben Simmons, because he was also another one who got that next LeBron tag, and I felt, I don't know about that. There, people were like, oh, well, LeBron didn't have a jumper. I'm like, I vividly remember LeBron being able to hit a mid-range jumper and a three-pointer, you left him open. With Ben
And LeBron was
Simmons,
willing to shoot it, which is a
yes,
big difference.
yes. With Ben
Like,
Simmons,
that's the difference between not having a jumper and not being willing to shoot the ball.
yeah. And I was like, I see Ben Simmons like afraid to shoot anything that's past 5 feet. And that's to me a concern if I'm a team that's like, I want you to be my number one guy. Here's the keys to the Ferrari. Like, go ahead, go crazy. If you can't even shoot a shot that you shoot during horse, I don't know if I can, in good faith, give you that kind of level of responsibility. So it's funny to take it back to that '03 draft, though. I do remember the biggest detractors being about his shooting ability, which is where Carmelo was seen as the lot safer pick because, okay, he had played college ball, had one of the greatest tournament runs that we're ever going to see. I don't care what nobody says. That's one of the greatest tournament runs we'll ever see from start to finish. And he had a lot more transmittable NBA skills as that number one guy. And with LeBron, it was like he loves to pass. So is he going to have that aggressiveness to score at the same rate? You know, these are conversations that we're having in real time. You know, a lot of people, there's a disconnect between the people who discovered the NBA in that time or beforehand versus the ones who discovered it after, that just don't have a clue about the discussions that were being had. But I remember these as active conversations, you know, being had everywhere. Barbershop, basketball court, school, you name it. And even in the media, because there was enough to still be, you know, let's not jump the gun here. The talent is there, but let's not, you know what I'm saying, overdo it. Let's not jump to conclusion until we know for sure.
Yeah. And I will say, I do think it was a travesty that they weren't 1-2 as they should have been.
Yes. Detroit,
The Darko Milicic.
you done messed up.
Was Dumars was he running things in Detroit at that time?
I believe so. You know, that was a rare miss for him in that time.
Thank God they won a title that year, because otherwise Bucko would have been out of a job. Like, you mean to tell me you passed up on Carmelo Anthony? Oh, the number one, if not the number two prospect coming in that NBA draft.
Yeah.
For Mr. Milicic.
Yeah. And you know what's so funny with him, with Darko was what kicked off the looking for the next Dirk Nowitzki. Because you had enough teams that were like 7-footer that can shoot and handle the ball. Next Dirk. Dirk Nowitzki. Oh, doesn't speak English? Next Dirk. You know, and that kind of also was, you know, because Yao went number 1 in 02. So and Powell went number 2 or number 3 in 2001. So the international players as well, that started the changing of how basketball was being scouted and played. But Darko being such a failure, I do recall teams being a little bit hesitant on drafting the foreign guys because they were worried about, okay, can they handle the physicality? Are they ready to step in? Are they going to need that time to get themselves seasoned? Yeah, honestly, we're gonna need to do another episode because there's still more to break down with this.
There's a lot. Yeah, I know we're running a little short on time, but we are going to come right back and hit this nail on the head.
Yeah, because there's more to cover with this draft.
This 03 draft, we got to give them their flowers while they're still around.
Right. 20 years is no small feat.
Yeah, no small feat at all. But we are gonna wrap it up right now for this episode of the Beige Brothers.
Beige Brothers, we here.
And we'll see you guys next episode for a little bit more talk on that class of 03.
Yes, sir. Let's get it.